Hi guys, Samantha from Jessimo Tutorials here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create an organic bowl. So what you're going to need to start with is a nice large thick piece of polymer clay. And now I'm using my mammoth machine to get this larger piece of clay. What you can do is you can roll out, you can take a block of clay, and now this is probably around 3 small blocks of Primo worth of clay, and what you'll do is you'll just roll those all together after you've conditioned them in your polymer clay pasta machine. Then roll that out using an acrylic roller to the thickness that you like. And it's fine if it's uneven in thickness, that's perfectly fine. So now I'm just finding the spot on here that I like, and if I see a little spot that is just a little dirty, I'll just scrape that off. And then you're going to need some feathers. Now by now these should be on my Etsy shop, and you can use any feathers you find, but I've got this nice ostrich feather. Let's see what else have I got, because lots of feathers have different shapes. Here's a little I do believe this is a pheasant feather. We got some guinea fowl feathers, or as I like to call them, funky chicken feathers. Another one of those ostrich feathers, and just a whole bunch. Here's some more pheasant feathers and some more dyed feathers. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start by trimming out our pattern. Okay, and I've just brought you out as far as the camera will allow me, and you're just going to grab a blade and just go around in a somewhat round fashion, and just roughly trim around the edges. And it doesn't have to be completely round, it doesn't have to be anywhere close to it. Just trim out a rough shape, like so. And then what you want to do is you want to be gently grabbing with your fingers and just press along these edges. Let me show you along the edge here, because you're going to have a sharp edge. Go and gently press against those edges. And don't worry about these fingerprints either. We're going for a really nice organic bowl today, so you don't have to worry about shapes being correct, you don't have to worry about fingerprints. We're just going to have a lot of fun creating a beautiful organic bowl, and we're really going to roll with that organic feel. So just press along the edges like so, and that shouldn't take too long. And I'm using white Primo today, but any brand should work. Then just go with your finger and smooth, just to get rid of most of those fingerprints, but mostly just to smooth down any lumps. And I'll repeat on the other side. So you'll just flip your clay and do it on the other side. And as I said, you can use any feathers you want, but try and get a few different types, range it a bit. So I've got a nice ostrich feather, I think those ones look really nice. See if you can get some different shaped feathers, because the more different shapes, the more interesting your bowl will be. There we go. And then once it's smoothed out like that, just lift it up, flip, and then repeat the process on the other side. Right, so once you're done with that, grab your bowl that is going to be your mould, and I've got this nice, rather large bowl, and just pop this down and just see that you're happy with the shape. And I don't need to press it down too much, and I'm pretty happy with the shape, so that's good. You just want to check before you proceed. Okay, now just smooth over the surface. Get rid of any cat hair that might have decided to tag along. Yeah. But you don't have to be really strict about it being completely white. Okay, so now we're going to grab our feathers. And I'm just going to place this one down. And I'm going to grab a piece of greaseproof paper, and I'm going to use this to press down. And just spend a bit of time making sure that you've got that feather stuck in there. And once you've got it pretty well stuck with your piece of greaseproof paper, you can grab your roller and then rub over. Just to get all of those pieces stuck in there really well. You want this properly stuck into that clay. It's very important. All the steps, that is the most important step. Okay, so I'll just check that that's pretty well stuck in. Okay, then I'll just make sure that there aren't any marks, and if there are, I'll just smooth them out. And then I think I'm going to skip the second one. And I'm going to move on to this rather large one. Let's see. I've got to decide which side we want. It's better to go with the side that is beveling up than down. So this side we want to lay face up. And again, grab a piece of greaseproof paper to help you with this. And some feathers might not want to stick into the clay. That is completely normal. Persist, and if it still won't, then you can just smooth out those lines and swap it for another feather. And let's see, you can see that the lines are coming up over there. So let me see if I can smooth this out a bit. And again, this is why I'm saying you don't have to worry about it being completely round, because if you make a little mistake, all you do is just grab the clay and smoosh it back into place. Oops. And you don't have to worry about your piece being completely even or anything like that. There you are. We'll just swap it out for a different feather. I think I'm going to use this nice phoenix. Oh, not phoenix. Pheasant feather, I do believe is what it is. And just continue to stick feathers into here until you're happy with how many you have. Okay, and so I filled it with as many feathers as I can. And so now what I want to do is I want to grab a piece of this scrapbooking ribbon, where it's kind of got this really nice rough texture to it. And I'll just press that into here. And it doesn't have to be a perfect press. I just want to kind of get the feeling of it. So I'm not going to use my roller to do it. I'm just going to kind of roughly press it around here. And it won't really affect the feathers due to the fact that we've still got them in. So it should go around them. But it's going to give us that really nice kind of earthy barnyard sort of effect. So I'll just go around and press that into here, and just carry on until you're happy with it. And you can try scrapbooking papers as well. Some of them have really cool textures, and you can basically use any texture you want. You could use sandpaper if you wanted, though I don't think that's really an appropriate sort of texture for this one, due to the fact that sandpaper is more of a beachy theme rather than a bird theme. So I decided to not go with sandpaper. But again, completely up to you. So just continue pressing your chosen texture in until you have covered basically your whole piece of clay. Okay, and now we're going to be working with some alcohol inks. And it's completely up to you the colours that you use, but today I'm going to be using ginger, teakwood, lettuce, bottle, you can see that I've been using them for a while, latte, and citrus. And those are the ones I am going to be using. Then you also want some sort of alcohol ink applicator, and I got this off of Linda's Art Spot, and it's got a nice felt pad, and it just means that you can add just a little bit of alcohol ink. So we are now just about ready to start. I just saw one spot that I want to just texture one more time. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to start by opening my bottles first, because you don't want to put one colour then open the next one and so on, because you'll find that your alcohol ink will dry on your felt pad. And always open your alcohol ink bottles away from your project, like I am now, because you will get these little crumbs. So here, let me show you my hand. This comes off of the alcohol ink. Those crumbs will get onto your clay and they will make a mess. So always remember to open away from your clay, and it will just make your life a lot easier. So I've just got one more to open. Okay, so now that they're all open, I'm going to start with ginger, and I'm just going to pop a little bit onto the alcohol ink thing, then teak wood, then I'm going to work with some lettuce, then the latte, then bottle, and then finally the citrus. And putting them on together like this means that as we're dabbing them across, they're going to start mixing together. So just kind of dab, and you're just going to get those top surfaces. And then when it starts to dry out, you can grab a little bit of your alcohol blending solution, or isopropyl alcohol will work as well if you don't have that, and then just drip a little bit on here, and that will moisten it up again so that it will continue to dab. But with this amount of clay, you're going to probably need to wet your alcohol inks again. So just continue until you've got a fair layer, but don't be going and making it too wet, because you don't want it to be getting under the feathers too much. Okay, and when you're done, you're going to just lift your feathers. There we go. And just be a little careful, because if I bring this one over, you can see that the clay does stick to it a little bit, so when you're lifting it, just be a little gentle. Yeah. There we are. Okay, and you can see we have beautiful, subtle areas where we had that. Now I've just got some 99.8% isopropyl alcohol, and I'm just going to give a quick spray, just to get the alcohol ink wet again. And then I'm just going to go and I'm gently going to rub some of the areas where I think it might have taken over the feathers just a touch too much. So I'll just wet and then just gently go over. And don't press hard. And you can do this over the pattern as well, to get some of that, whatever your pattern was again. And that's just generally what I like to do, because it will then just highlight it a little bit more. Don't go overboard though, because that's very easy to do, and if you go overboard it can sometimes, because your pattern is very shallow, it can very easily remove too much. So just be gentle and just go in brush strokes. And don't worry about going over the areas that are plain white, because going over there will just take them from that really bright white to just a little bit of a off-white, which is nice. And just continue until you are happy with how it looks. Okay, and so here is how it looks. So now I'm gently going to just lift that up and just show you. Now depending on how many times you sprayed it, it probably is going to start to feel quite dry, and that is fine. And it's also going to have dulled the alcohol inks, but that's also quite fine. Now later I want to put a little bit of a crackle on this, I do think. And I just think it looks really nice so far. Don't worry about the back, we are going to take care of that after it is baked, but for now this is how it looks. So I'm just going to pop that to the side. Okay, and I've just cleaned my tile. Now, just want to pop this down, and now I've got these three corners. So I've got one here, and one around here. And what I want to do is I want to take my tissue blade, well not tissue blade, my craft knife. And I just want to, and I can hear a collective gasp. I just want to cut out a really nice just chunk of clay there. And there's one around here too, but I want to do a little bit of a smaller one over here. Now you're all wondering, why am I cutting out such a nice piece of clay? Don't worry, there is a reason. It's going to create a little bit more of a center point, and also it's going to break up the outline so that it looks less chunky. And then just go with your finger and press around those edges just to bring it down, so you don't have that sharp point there anymore. And press downwards so that you don't get too much of a white border. Don't mind having a little bit, but I don't want too much. And I'm not worrying about fingerprints at all at this point in time. Okay, and then I think I'm pretty happy with that. Then I'll bring over our bowl. And then just press it in around the edges, like so. And you don't have to get it completely flat, but it's best to try and get it smooth out. And also just smooth along these edges, because you can get rid of any any little bits and pieces of straw that might be left over. Okay, and I'm quite happy with that, but I want to just give this a little stretch, just in some areas. Okay, and then I'll place this back in the bowl. And these actually look quite nice now. They're just these really interesting centerpieces. And I'm not worrying about squishing the texture, because we've essentially highlighted it enough with the alcohol ink that if it does get squished, it's not going to disappear. So all I'm doing is I'm just pulling on some areas just to get it into a spot that I like. Okay. Okay, and now we've just got a little crack along this feather line here, and I'm just going to go in with a ball tool, just gently smooth that out. And I might just have a look along this feather line, if that's fine. Just check that there are no obvious cracks. Little ones are fine, but any big ones can be a little bit of a problem. Alright, and so I'm pretty happy with how this looks. And so now, let's see. What we're going to do on the back is after it's baked, I'm going to paint it with alcohol ink. So I don't have to worry about the back or these little white edges here. I'm not too worried about that. I'm just going to have a look at this and see if there's anything else that I want to do with it. I'm just going to try and get it to sit flat against this as well while I'm looking at it. Okay, so I'm happy with it. Now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to bake it like it is, and then when it is baked we're going to paint the back and inside here a little bit with alcohol inks, and we're going to get it to bloom so that it looks really nice. And then we're also going to be painting a little bit of crackle just along these edges over here, but not in the middle, so this will create a nice center point for your eye to rest on. And then we'll probably highlight those cracks with like a nice dark brown or possibly even black. And then while this is in the oven, I want to create a little disc for this to sit on, because I want it to have this sort of a rim on the bottom here. So I'm going to go pop this in the oven, and I'm going to bake this at Primo's recommended temperature for a full hour, 60 minutes, and possibly even longer than that, I'll have to see. And now just to make sure that it is baked properly, I'm going to grab one of those pieces that we cut out earlier, and I don't want to use that much clay. So I'm just going to cut out a small amount and just kind of squish it around a little bit to give different thicknesses. And I'm going to put this in the oven with the bowl, and it's going to stay in there for the exact same amount of time. And then when this is cooled and this is cooled, I'm going to test this to see if it will break. If it breaks, I need to put this in at a higher temperature and bake for another hour. If this is nice and strong and pliable and properly baked, then I know that my bowl is baked. And this is a great tip to use with your other projects as well, because then you're not going to test your actual project that took a long time to make. You're just testing a little piece of scrap clay, and if this breaks, then there's no harm done. You can just pop this back in again and this in again for another hour and at another 5 degrees up, and that way you will never actually end up breaking your piece, which can be a little bit of a problem in the beginning when you're working out your oven. So I'll pop this in the oven and then we can start on the base. Okay, so while that is in the oven, we're going to start with our base. So just grab some black primer, and it doesn't necessarily have to be conditioned. Just start out with some chunks of clay, and I'm just rolling them out on my tile. Okay. And you're going to need a fair amount because this is going to be the base for our bowl. Now I've already gone and tested out what I want to make, so I've got one off to the side ready to go, and I'll show you that in a little while. But what you want to do is you want to start out with a nice sausage and make it fairly thick. You want a nice thick piece of clay to start with, and then just join it together. And don't worry about keeping this perfectly round or anything like that. Again, going for a really nice organic shape. So just join it together like so. Okay. Then grab whatever texture you were using before on your bowl and just pinch around the edges to get that texture on. Like so. And don't worry about any little bits of straw that happen to stay. That's fine. If you can remove them, then do so, but don't worry too much about it. Just texture the top. And just try and get around the sides as well. Okay. And you want to aim for kind of a domed sort of a shape, but the back's going to be nice and flat. Okay, and then once you've made that and you're happy with it, pop it off to the side and grab another piece of black clay and roll that into a little snake. And I apologise for the alcohol ink on my hands. And then just gently tap it. Don't squish it completely flat. You just, whoops, want to make it roughly flat. And again, don't worry about getting it perfect. Go for a nice organic shape. Now I like to take a small segment and I like to twist. And we're going for kind of a yarn straw sort of feeling. I'm going for like a real farmhouse feel to this project. So just twist it together like so. Then bring this over and just place it on in the way that you would like it. And then continue placing these on until you've filled up the whole thing. And what you should end up with is something looking kind of like this. And this is what we are going to work with. And now I am thinking of highlighting the top with gold mica powder, but I am a little undecided about it because I want to kind of keep that organic effect. So I'm going to wait until my bowl is out of the oven before I do anything more, and then we'll see how it goes and whether or not it actually needs any highlighting, because it's already quite textured and I don't think it really needs anything else, but we'll see. So that is what it should look like, and your back should be quite flat. And don't worry about the back, we'll give it a quick sand after we are done. So just pop that off to the side, and that will be baked for a full hour as well at pretty much recommended temperature. And next time you see it, either we'll be putting mica powder on it or it will be baked. Okay, and so after having examined the bowl, which just came out of the oven, nice and hard, solid but just slightly flexible, once I had examined it, I decided that the base was best if it was just plain black. So that is in the oven right now, and I've just gone over the back and I've sanded it with a 360 piece of wet dry sandpaper just to get rid of any shiny spots. Now I'm just going to take a piece of 800 wet dry sandpaper and I'm just going to sand a few areas on the front here. And I'm going to avoid the feathers as much as I can. And I'm just going to try and sand in the areas around the feathers, just to try and brighten it up a little bit and maybe highlight those feathers a little bit more. And now this is going to be sealed with a matte varnish, so we don't have to worry about getting a nice shiny finish. So I'm just using a nice coarse grit to just go around and remove a little bit more of a top layer from here. And then when we're done with that, I will rinse it off and then we can get onto colouring the back. For now, I'm just going to remove a bit of the alcohol ink from the front. Okay, so I finished sanding, and so it's got a nice smooth finish to it. And here is what the back looks like. So now what we want to do, I just want to zoom it out quickly. There we go. And we want to paint the back here. And so you want to choose to either have a brown or a green backing, or depending on what alcohol inks you're. So I used brown and green alcohol inks on this project. So I'm going to separate them into their two colour categories. So I can either have a brown back or I can have a green back. And this will depend basically on what you chose to use as alcohol ink. So let's say you used red and green, for instance. Probably a bad colour combination, but anyway. let's just say you chose red and green. You would either have a red back or a green back. So I'm going to be having a green back. So I'm going, since my hands are alcohol inked anyway, I'm not going to worry about it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 99% alcohol. You can use the alcohol blending solution too. And I'm just going to give the back a good spritz. Okay. And then I'm going to grab my alcohol inks. I'm just going to open them ahead of time. There we go. I'll just give this another spritz. Okay. And I'm just going to drop this on, and then I'm going to smooth it onto the surface. This is what I'm saying, I'm not worrying about my hands with the alcohol ink anymore. I'm not going to use gloves because that irritates me. I only use gloves if I absolutely have to. But we're just going to smooth it around, essentially staining it, and go into these pores as well. You want to colour that as well. And that one was the citrus that I was using. Okay, so I like to start with the lightest colour. Okay, and then just carry on smoothing and then let it dry. Okay, then I will give it another light spray, and I'm going to use a little bit of the bottle, and I gave it a lighter spray than before. Okay. There we go. And I'll give it a spray around here, and this time I'm going to use a touch of the lettuce. And just continue playing until you're happy with the amount of green that you have. I just want a nice light layer of green. And just kind of blend them into each other. You don't want any sharp colour transitions. This is going to be a nice blended back. So you can see it, we've got a nice blend between the colours here. And this is why I'm choosing to use my fingers, because it can be a little tricky to do this with gloves on. But just have fun, play around with it. You can use gloves if you don't want to get your fingers turned green. But have fun, give it a nice colour. And you can see that that's going to go quite nicely with our front. And remember to go around the edges here as well. Okay, and so here is how it looks. And I've also gone around these edges, making it from white to off-white, and also along the inside of these I just went and gently rubbed my finger. And so now we are going to move on to the browns. You could leave it like this if you wanted to, but I now want to have some browns. So we're going to move that out the way for a second, but we're going to need our alcohol applicator again, and I'm just going to open up my brown alcohol inks. There we go. And then I'm just going to put a drop or two of each. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to just tap them on. And bear with me, this will look better in a minute. Just go around and make sure that you get everywhere. And don't overdo it, just do a little bit. That's fun. Okay, then grab your alcohol ink, 99% alcohol ink, and just spray the whole thing. Don't overdo it, but just give it a thorough wetting. Okay, and I'm just going to hold it like this so that it dries. I want to get it so that it kind of runs and smudges and smears. And you can blow to get it to move around as you want. Now, another thing to be careful is just to try to not get it to go on the front of your piece, because that could be problematic. So just do it a little bit at a time. Okay. And then I'm going to go around with a wet wipe. I'm just going to gently tap and dry. And that's going to remove a lot of the ink. And it's just going to make it a lot more soft. Okay, and then I'm just going to go around the front here, and I'm just going to gently dry it, because we will have a little bit of run over, so we want to get that quickly. Now just spray a few more areas and just remove most of that ink. And there. Now I'm just going to clean the tile, run around the edges again. We've now got a very nice soft pattern on the back. Okay, and now I might just add a little bit of green. Just see what happens if I drip a little bit onto my finger and just kind of drop it around and then rub. I'll spray again, and the spraying each time will lift a bit that ink. And so you can play around with it, you could do some more layering if you want, or you can leave it the way it is. What I want to do now is I want to bring over a really nice coarse bit of sandpaper, and I'll show you what I want to do with that. And this, I believe, is about 180 grit. And all I want to do is I want to scratch. And the goal is to expose that white. Just do it in all sorts of crossovers, a crosshatch pattern. And don't forget these little areas too. And I'll just continue until I'm happy with that pattern that I'm getting. And you can stop at any time when doing this. Okay, then after you've scratched it all up, just make sure to give it a thorough wipe down with a wet wipe just to remove stuff. And I've gone around and specifically scratched along the edges of all of my little bits, of all of my holes and edges. That's completely up to you if you want to do that or not. And now what I want to do is I want to highlight this. And so I want to grab and look at what the front looks like. And I want to put a little bit more brown in. So I'm going to grab my ginger, rub that in, spray, and remove. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the alcohol ink that works best for this. Just do the teak wood, see if this works better. Essentially, what I'm aiming to do is highlight those scratches, like that. And all of that, what we did underneath, will stay, but it will be a subtle in the background thing. I just want to highlight those scratches. And alcohol ink is best done when you do it in layer after layer after layer. So now I've done a bit of brown, I'm now going to move on to some bottle green. And I'll just continue layering this until I am happy with how it looks. Okay, and here is how it should look. You can see that all of the cracks, or scratches in that case, have been highlighted. So now I'm going to take some 400 grit wet dry sandpaper and I'm just going to sand. And now you're going to notice that some areas are going to go white while others are going to stay kind of coloured. That is what you're aiming for. So just give it a light once over. You don't need to go crazy with it. And then when I'm done, I'll show you how it looks. Okay, and here's how it should look when you are done. And so you can see it looks really quite nice, and it looks like a bundle of straw almost, or at least that's what I'm going for. So now on the front I want to just give it a light antiquing with some burnt umber. So I'm just going to squeeze that paint directly into the bowl. And I'm just going to smooth that all around, or as much as I can, and then when I can't do that anymore I'll just spray it with some water to get it to move a bit. There you go, and just work it into all of those gaps. So let me just bring over some water. Just spraying a little bit of water in here, just to help it move around a bit. And this is just going to highlight all of that texture. And if you don't like it, you can always just wash it away. Okay, I'm going to just spray some more in here. Okay, and I might just bring over some more burnt umber paint. Okay, then you let that dry to a large degree. And just, you can dab it if you want while you're waiting for it to dry. Okay, and then I'm just going to grab a cloth to help me get rid of this paint. And it's going to only antique some of the deeper crevices. And some of the areas where we had a little bit of cracks and things like that. So it's just another little layer in the project. Just go around, rub, make sure you get everything. And I just need to get that spot there, because the painted dried. So if it doesn't work, I just spray a little bit. And you can see that we had some crackle around those edges and things. So that will have highlighted that. Okay, and I'm just going to spray with my 99% alcohol just to help remove the last little bits. It will brighten it up quite a bit by doing that. But then you've also darkened up some of the areas and just added a touch more detail. It's all about adding layer after layer after layer, and then at the end they all just kind of add up together into something really nice. So I'm just going to clean away all of that paint, and it'll just be left inside those cracks. Mostly around the feathers, to be honest. And I've painted around the edges as well. That, just clean up as much of it as you can get off, but don't stress too much about that. We want to leave a fair amount of paint around there. And then after that, I am going to add the crackle medium. Okay, and so here is how it looks, and here is the back. So both really organic and really nice. So we're now going to apply our little areas of crackle. And so instead of going around the edges like I said before, I'm just going to apply random areas, I've decided. So you're going to be using Deco Art Perfect Crackle Step 2 and Step 1. And I'm just going to give this a good shake. Okay. And I'm just going to use my finger, and I'm just going to paint it around in areas I think could do with a little bit more interest. There we go. And now the nice thing about this is that it dries somewhat shiny, and so you should be able to see the areas where you have put it. So don't worry about not being able to see where it is. So I'm just going to kind of paint it around here and then just dab it, because if you want nice big cracks or little cracks or anything like that, it's best to be random about it. Thicker layers will end up with larger cracks, and thinner layers will end up with thinner cracks. So just go and dab around as you wish, and then you need to let this dry completely before you apply Step 2. And then Step 2 will need to dry. And I'm probably going to let Step 2 dry overnight just to make sure that I get the full potential as far as the cracks go. Okay, and so I'm just going to continue dabbing. Okay, so it's dried, and so hopefully you can see that there are some shiny areas. And so I'm just going to take the crackle step number 2, and I'm going to paint over those areas, and then I'm going to leave this basically overnight, or at least for 3 hours to dry. And so I'm just going to give this a good shake, and then all you do is you paint it over the others. And so the next time you will see this, we should have some crackles. Okay, and so the last thing to do is to antique this quickly. So it's out of the oven, and I've decided I think I want to antique it with some yellow ochre. And so I'm just going to dab the paint around the edges. I'm going to try and keep my hands out of the way. I'm just going to paint that into all of the cracks. This just came out of the oven a little while ago. It's been cooling off in some water, so it's got a little bit of water on it to help move the paint around. And just paint over the whole surface. And again, I'm not really worried too much about whether or not my hands get dirty. This project's about having fun, and you know what? It's no fun worrying about whether or not your hands are getting dirty. Just paint in all of those holes. Oops. Make sure you get everything. Okay, and then I'll just quickly let that dry while I rinse off my brush and my hands. Okay, now just grab a wet wipe. You should be able to wipe away pretty much all of it. And it's not completely dry yet, so I'm just wiping away a bit of it. And then I'll wait for it to completely dry before I continue. But I want to get rid of most of the paint while it is still somewhat wet. Especially in these loops, because they can be a little hard to get to later when it's properly dried. But don't remove too much just yet. There we go. And once it is dry, you can really go to town cleaning it up. And you could even use some sanding papers if you wanted to. So I'm just going to finish cleaning this up, and then by the time I'm done with that, you should be able to start seeing some crackles, but we might have to wait a while for that. So I'm probably going to give this a little bit of a sand to clean it up, and I'm also going to sand the back as well, just with some coarse sandpaper. Alright, so I have finished our little base, and now I can sand it a little bit more, and I'll do that in a little while because the base needs to be sanded up nicely. But this is basically what it's going to look like. So it's kind of got a yarn straw sort of feel to it. And then here is what our bowl looks like. It has been drying overnight, and you can see all of those bits have dried. You can't see the crackles just yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some burnt umber paint, and I'm just going to drop some onto the tile here. Just grab a bit, and then I just need to look so that I can see where those cracks are, and I'm just going to work them in. Now, because we already antiqued this, it's not going to be a problem if we get it in places where the crackles aren't, because we've already antiqued it with this burnt umber colour, so getting it in other areas isn't going to hurt. So spend a little bit of time working in, make sure you got it into all of those spots that you want it in, like so. And then just grab a wet wipe, and I like to go around the edges especially, just wipe that up. And now you just want to be careful because this crackle can lift very easily, which is why I like to let it dry overnight. But it does lift up quite easily, so you need to just be gentle when you're doing this. Don't rub too hard, just gently kind of brush over the surface. And I'll repeat this with all of the other ones, and if I lift it up too much, like I think I might have done that here, just a little bit too much, I will repeat. But you just want some interesting little cracks sitting around like that. So I'll repeat all over. Okay, and here is how it should look when you are done. So these, if you let them dry overnight, they should be fairly stuck to the bowl, so they shouldn't lift up. If they're lifting up, then you probably haven't let it dry long enough, but these ones didn't lift up, so they're pretty much dry now. And we're now going to move on to just sealing it with a matte varnish. And now the back does not need to be sealed, so I'm going to leave that. It's just the front here where we have this crackle that needs to be sealed. And so I'm going to be using Liquitex matte varnish. Now just give it a gentle stir, or I like to just do this just to get things moving around in there. And then I'll just open that up. And I've got a nice big brush for this because we want to do it in nice amounts. And we don't want brush strokes, so soak your brush pretty well. And then just kind of brush it over the surface. We only really need one coat, but you can do two if you want. Just brush across the surface and get rid of those bubbles as you're brushing. And just get everywhere, and then you'll let that dry, and then I think that is about it. I'm just going to go and sand that base a little bit more. I want to give it a nicer sand than what it has, but other than that I think we're pretty much done. So I'll just continue brushing this varnish on, and then we'll let it dry. Okay, so I've given this a quick sand on the back, and this is now done. You can see that it is nice and matte. There's no more shiny spots, which is nice, and it just looks really nice with those cracks. I think they look quite nice. And the back I've just given another quick little sand just to smooth it out. It's not shiny, it's still at a matte finish, but it's just really nice and smooth to the touch. So that is basically it for this tutorial, and so I do hope that it was helpful to you. You can now use this as decoration. You can put little, I'm not sure exactly what they're called, but I'll have it in the photos. You can put little baubles in here. You could collect a bunch of pine cones and other little forest things you could put in here. You could even have some real feathers and just have it as like a little bit of a statement piece in your dining room or lounge, or just as a decoration in the house. If you wanted to use it for food, you would only use it for things like fruit or wrapped sweets. And don't let the fruit go old in here, because the polymer clay is porous, and if you got it in there it wouldn't be very good. But it would be perfectly safe to use with like apples or bananas or something like that if you wanted to put it on the side. Just make sure that the fruit doesn't go old in there. And wrapped sweeties would be perfectly fine in here as well. But or any other foods, I would not recommend it. So that is basically it for this tutorial, and so I do hope that it was helpful to you. I did enjoy playing around with it. You can play around with it as well, do it in different colours, maybe just have one feather going down and then having a whole bunch of crackle around. You can leave out the holes if you want, you can make the holes larger, you could make the holes smaller, completely up to you. And so I do hope that it was helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.